Hello everyone, welcome to the third show of COOLDOWN, which is on a mission for universal dream of peace to bring, cool down of anger, prejudice, and global warming. And I'd like to introduce you to our wonderful guest who's appeared for the second time on our show, COOLDOWN. He's a mechanical engineer and an environmental social conscience. He's a volunteer activist. He's been a volunteer for Universal Dream of Peace and now for COOLDOWN, and I'm sure many other organizations as well. I'd like to mention that he's also an author. He's written this fabulous book called Rethinking Progress, and it's a marvelous read. I think it's a wealth of information, and it's very easy to read, and he certainly has a lot of reference material for those of you who want to check his accuracy, and I want to welcome you so much.
Thank you, Marion,
for coming the second time.
Thank you.
You're a joy.
Thank you.
So, please, I just want to know how it is that you came to work on such a difficult project, gathering so much factual information. What pushed your desire to put this much work into it? What's your passion? I know it.
I got started, Marion, in trying to find ways for countries, developing nations to progress. And I was looking for ways, and I wasn't quite satisfied with what modernization of the types that we had were doing for these societies. So I started reading and writing. And the more I read, the more I became convinced that the type of progress we were having was not one that would be good for everybody and in the long term for the planet. So I started reading a lot more about all of these issues from 1978. Then in 1992, I was brought up short by the Rio Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. And we participated. We had an organization called Midwest Earth Summit Network in the Chicago area, and we organized many events. We tried to promote an awareness of global climate change, biodiversity, forests, and all that. But I all of a sudden realized that the world was global, everything was global, our environment was global, and that what we were doing, I became convinced, was not good for the long-term benefit of the people of the world. And that's when I realized that but I also realized that I didn't understand these things very well. So I went and I started to educate myself through reading and writing because I needed to understand the issues. So since 1992 to now, that has culminated in my book in 2005. This is the result of my education, and I hoped by writing this book to share the results of my education with the world. And that's the reason why I got started with the book.
Thank you. I'm so glad you did, and that I finally, last show, if you recall, I hadn't yet read the book and I had seen the outline. And I'm just amazed at the wealth of information. And what really sort of blew my mind was to think that the chain of events, to be a beef eater or to eat meat of any kind, is actually encouraging, if I understood it correctly, some very wasting of food for all the poundage of corn and soy or whatever it takes to feed the animals to produce 1 pound of meat. And when you think of the starving population we have, so much more could be going to them if we didn't waste by eating meat. But I sure do like my meat, but I have to be honest. But it's sort of going to have me rethinking something here for myself.
Yeah, it's the pollution that causes while you're growing all the feed with pesticides and fertilizer and all that, and then you take large amounts of calories and use it for creating a small amount of meat. But if you do it by the factory farming approach, again, that generates more pollution. You have these immense amounts of waste coming from the animals. If that doesn't get treated, that causes its own environmental problems. So there's a whole host of issues involved.
Well, when you say, Hari, the factory approach of growing, by that you mean what?
It means treating the soil like a factory. Mm-hmm. A soil is a living organism. It has nutrients in it, it has microorganisms in it that are working for you over time. It has earthworms working on it over time. You use a factory approach, you just turn it into a material that you basically put a seed in there, and then you feed it with fertilizer and immense amounts of water, and when it grows, if bugs or if insects come and want to enjoy it, you basically, and those insects would die off anyway to some extent. You go and you spray chemicals on them in large quantities, and you kill the predators at the same time as you're trying to kill the little insect you're calling a pest, and then you're getting all of that to go to your groundwater. So it's like a factory approach.
So we're actually doing more harm than good in controlling the insect from trying to eat whatever amount of food it would eat.
Right, and we ought to find more, and my book outlines more holistic ways, better ways of controlling insects that we may consider undesirable, or plant species that we may consider undesirable that might be competing. They have found, for example, that certain plants, like human beings like to get along with each other, companion planting, certain plants like each other plants. So why not grow them together, And so those kinds of, that sort of bioscientific knowledge has gotten pushed to one side as this factory approach with immense profits for agribusiness. That approach has sort of ruled, both in raising crops and in raising animals. You raise chicken in little cages.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And you feed them all kinds, and basically they are sick chicken that you're keeping alive with antibiotics. You continuously feed them antibiotics and feed hormones and so forth.
Thereby, as you ingest it.
That's right, and all of those that cycle. When chicken were going around and eating little insects and being natural chicken, that natural chicken was a lot more worth eating than the factory farmed chickens that we eat today.
As I understand it, the chickens who are allowed to wander and peck the gravel are creating a lecithin within them, and when they lay eggs, those eggs are less cholesterol because of the lecithin factor that they ingest. I don't know if you know anything about that.
I don't have much of a knowledge of that, no.
But that's far afield from where where I'm sure we wanted to go. What are some of the ways that the average person who may think, oh, there's nothing I can do about what's going on in the world, it's all the government that has to control and change the world and make things healthier. What can we as individuals, whether it be children, adults, senior citizens, in all levels of life, there must be things that we can all do.
Oh, absolutely, Marion. Firstly, global warming is a problem or global climate change is a problem that's really facing us. It's a very severe problem. It can have tremendous upheavals occur in human society. The Stern report that came out in the UK recently said that maybe in 20 to 30 years we might have as much as 20% decrease in the incomes of all the nations of the world on the average. So it could have some devastating health consequences, species survival, and economic damage. Right now, global warming is happening, So what can we do? And I thought about that a great deal. And first, just to give you a little example of what do in my life, and then I can give examples on what youth and elderly and other people can do. I use energy efficient light bulbs, energy efficient appliances. I insist on getting nothing but the most energy efficient appliance in the house. When I bought my dishwasher, for example, it was in the lower 1/3 range of energy consumption. Energy efficient furnace. When an old furnace gave out, I got a 90% efficiency furnace. So I'm saving on natural gas. An energy efficient car. My previous car was giving 20 miles to the gallon. I have a hybrid electric car right now that gives me 40 to 45 miles to the gallon. For the first time, I am realizing that it's actually saving, it's a financial benefit to me, because as gas goes to $3 a gallon and the price of electricity has gone up by 24% in January, I am actually going to be benefiting by using things that are energy efficient. At the same time, I'm doing things good for the planet.
Absolutely.
Travel by energy efficient car. If I go someplace, I only hike and I bike when I get there. I give preference to vacation travel closer to home. There are lots of nice places around very close to Chicago that are very nice and enjoyable, right across the lake, for example. I can go biking right on Lakeshore Drive. That's a great vacation.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So things like that. In 2003, for example, I installed a solar panel on the south side of my house. It's about a 1 kilowatt solar panel that generates electricity, and installed with a dual meter. So when electricity is flowing out to the utility, they pay me. When it comes in, I pay.
Hari, I'd like to ask you a question, to interrupt you for just a brief moment. Why would people who don't believe in global warming, no matter what they hear, and they, especially now that the weather's turned cold, they said, ha, 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 global warming, it's another show that it doesn't exist. Why would they want to do any of these things?
Well, a lot of people still think that global warming is a lot of hot air. But really speaking, just recently, a team of international scientists, there's an Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. And IPCC, in its fourth report, the first one was in 1990. The last report they are coming out with this year, the summary we have gotten earlier, 2,500 plus scientists of the world, 130 plus countries. All of them are saying global warming is a reality, global climate change is a reality, human activity is doing it, and it can have it is having already bad consequences and can have devastating consequences. Now, to answer that question, what is happening is, what people realize that fossil fuel reduction is going to mean immense upheaval, immense changes in their lifestyle, or could lead to immense changes. It need not actually, as I want to point out. But, for example, if you have the Gulf Stream that goes in the Atlantic, it's driven by the heat of the atmosphere, by the Earth, and that warm current goes all the way and warms up Iceland and the British Isles and Northern Europe. Well, when global warming comes in, that stream will get weakened. So now the nice warmer temperatures that Northern Europe is having right now in winter will turn colder. So global warming in some cases can have the opposite effect. Now, people look at Iceland and they say, oh, Iceland is getting colder. So it must be, the global warming must be wrong. And you have these few, I call them scientists, that use the Tobacco Institute approach, you publish wrong results often enough, you show enough confusion in the public's minds, and they will get to believe you, And so people take examples like that. Now, for example, another example, you have deluges of rain taking place which never used to occur in the past. Most drainage systems are designed for 1 inch of rain in 24 hours. What happens now, these days you're getting 7 inches, 10 inches. Bombay had 36 inches of rain in 2005 in 24 hours. Which drainage system can cope with that? So, but now you take the other factor. In the US this winter, 1 inch of rain gives you 12 inches of snow, a foot of snow approximately. Well, instead of having 10 inches of rain, you're going to get 10 feet of snow. So you're going to have things like that happening. And so that happened somewhat in upper New York State this winter.
Yes, it sure did.
And that's the kind of thing we're going to have happen. We're going to have deluges of rain. We're going to have lots, when snow occurs, we're going to have enormous amounts of it that's going to almost bury you. When you get rain, it's going to create flash flooding in many places. So those kinds of things also accompany global warming.
And isn't it unusual that we've had so many tornadoes in the wintertime? I think that's unusual. In other words, even some of the things that may be considered good, that we've had warmer weather, warmer winter till the last couple of weeks, they were thinking, oh, this is wonderful, but isn't the fact that it's not normal more of a indicator that the global warming is affecting us, even if we think it's good temporarily? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, one of the predictions of global warming is increase in severity of natural storms, weather-related storms. And so you have more of this thermal energy. So some places the water temperature is going to be higher, and you're going to have a more differential. Mm-hmm. So the differential drives the air system of the planet, and so you have more temperature differences, you're going to have more severe violent weather. So in 2004 you had these heavy hurricanes hitting Florida, more severe hurricanes, and then you had Hurricane Katrina last year.
New Orleans,
Yeah. And so you're going to get more severe hurricanes, you're going to get more severe tornadoes, because there's more energy in the atmosphere. And the storms are going to get more severe. You're going to get submergence in the end. By the end of the century, 2/3 of Florida is going to be underwater.
But then there's also people who say that it's a natural course of events, that through the centuries our planet has gone through all kinds of severe changes, and that it's normal is what people who are fighting that there is such a thing as global warming.
Chapter 2 in my book goes through what is called the biography of the planet.
Right.
The planet didn't have oxygen to begin with. As photosynthesis, life came in, anaerobic life, photosynthesis came in, they created its oxygen. So life itself created the oxygen that we breathe. Carbon dioxide was very high in the atmosphere, the planet was very hot, most of the water used to boil off. Through chemical cycles, through the oceans, you had these calcium carbonate deposits at the bottom of the ocean. Then along came the fossils in the sea creatures. Their fossils also generated dolomite deposits at the bottom of the thing. So the planet went through many stages of carbon reduction as it cooled. Mm-hmm. The last stage, which occurred over the last 3 to 600 million years, was the generation of fossil fuels, where all this carbon went into the fossils and went into the carboniferous forest that turned into coal. And all these fossils that turned into fossil fuel. That's why we call them fossil fuel. Now, when the temperature came down into a range that was favorable to the human species, as the Earth precesses, in each precession there is an oscillation in the precession. Each oscillation of the spin of the world creates a maxi ice age. Now that the temperature has come into the region that's favorable for us, we get some ice ages and some mini ice ages. The last mini ice age lifted 10,000 years ago, and after that we've had what we know as civilization. Mm-hmm. The big ice age before that was 130,000 years. It was followed by Neanderthal man in Europe. Mm-hmm. Now, what people don't realize is that we are taking all of this carbon that the planet has so very nicely taken and removed from the atmosphere. If you look at Venus, it is 900 degrees Fahrenheit. It has a runaway greenhouse effect. All the water kept boiling off. Water couldn't condense. But in our planet, the planet has so favored us by getting rid of so much carbon dioxide. We are taking it now and fast and furiously putting it right back in the atmosphere. And so what that is doing is it is causing much more global warming than life as we know it can sustain. So it may be okay for the planet. The planet itself will survive. But it will be unfavorable for our species and for the life as we know it. Mm-hmm. That's the problem.
Right. So, again, my question is, what do you think will cause people to take action if you mentioned using certain forms of energy is cost effective? I think that will influence some people. But when they realize it's affecting health on a continuing basis, where so many more cases of cancer, yes, people are also living longer, but I believe that's due to the technological changes and medications and stuff that they've prolonged life, but then there's quality of life. But for life to be in a healthier way of living, what can we do as children and families and so on, or people who live in nursing homes? What can they do? They can't be spending the money on energy efficient things such as you are doing and many people will do. But what about things we can do on an everyday basis that will help?
Oh yeah, definitely. All of us can actually do something. The young are usually very idealistic, and the choices are usually governed by their families, often, and governed by their families. They first need to absorb the mindset that global climate change is a real problem and is really hurting us. We need to do something about it. And firstly, diplomatically, within their families, they ought to learn about it and let their views and preferences known within their families. Secondly, whenever they get the opportunity, they should try to nudge the family towards energy efficient choices. When they are talking about travel, vacation and all that, they should ask the question, is there something that we can do that can minimize the impact on the planet, have some travel that is done either in a more favorable mode and that sort of thing. We can be doing hiking or biking instead of driving the car around. Mm-hmm. With all this thing taking place with all of these energy costs, schools are experiencing vast increases in the energy costs. So they can be doing activities at school. Now I'll give you an example that a lady did, who was an adult lady, not a child. She did, when she went to pick up her kid at school, she was lined up with cars and they were all idling. And she realized that they were wasting energy. Now when it's very cold, it's obviously understandable because you need to stay warm, but she started what was called an anti-idling initiative. And all that they did was the school asked the parents to not idle their cars if the outside temperatures are not bad and not good. So it would create less pollution, it would save energy, and they put signs by the side where the cars wait
Oh, that's excellent.
So you can think of innovative things like that. The elderly feel like they're less influential, but there are many things that the elderly can do. Again, like the young, they have to absorb the mindset that global climate change is a real problem and make their views known whenever they get together with family or people. Then in their own condos and houses, whenever they need to, they should only purchase energy efficient appliances, furnaces, air conditioners. When they rent, they should insist the landlord make energy efficient choices. When it comes to replacing electric bulbs, just use the most energy efficient bulbs that are now available. That, for a 100 watt bulb, you can get something, the same amount of light with a 24 watt. You're only spending 25% of the thing on energy. They should speak up at group activities and events, at social or religious groups. And they should think of imaginative ways of conserving energy, by walking for exercise instead of driving a car.
Well, I'd like to ask you something then. Isn't there, I know in certain villages and cities people do recycling, but I also know there's many people who do not recycle, do not see the need for recycling. That means plastic and glass and paper and I really would love to see people realize that is a way that they can, I think, make a big contribution to global warming by just not being wasteful and throwing, because we have, as you've mentioned in your book, Rethinking Progress, are the lands that we have for the garbage recycling can only hold so much land. So it's if things aren't reused in some way and creating jobs for recycling and making products from what's already been used, isn't that also part of what you're saying in your book as I'm interpreting it? That
Absolutely, Marion. I think with these commodity prices that have been going up recently, it makes even more economic sense to be recycling. Aluminum, for example, it takes enormous amounts of energy and cost to produce a pound of aluminum because you have to do it through electrolysis, and it's a very energy guzzling product. But if you take aluminum foil or any aluminum throwaway product like beer cans and produce aluminum, very little energy involved, much less. So it makes sense for commodity prices because commodity prices have gone down. But government really needs to step in and really needs, jobs can be created. You can be recycling everything. You can mandate that all forms of packaging should be either reusable or recyclable, and you can be, for example, paper. You could stop cutting down trees. At the same time, if you use recycled paper by total chlorine-free methods, the impact on the planet is less because you're not using chlorine methods for recycling the paper, and at the same time you're saving trees. And so it really makes sense, but what it really needs is government policy stepping in, providing the incentives, providing the regulation, and saying, thou shalt thing, and then making sure there's immense number of jobs. We're talking about losing jobs.
Yes.
Immense number of jobs can be created in ensuring, if we ensure that more of our product is that we use gets recycled.
Well, here, for instance, we're here in Skokie, and we do have recycling. They come to the large buildings and they put in their dumpsters if you're in a large building, or they have recycling containers in front of homes. I can see it. But I also know that many people do not recycle. And they're friends of mine, and I'm just, it boggles my mind how much time does it take to drop it in to a little bag in your kitchen or whatever to keep it, and then to take it to a recycling point within your building or outside when you're going out, and they won't do it. The mindset, it boggles my mind why people won't take responsibility that they're part of the problem and they can be part of the solution. I don't know if there's some way that government can step in and say it's a must, or you'll be charged extra if you don't, but there's got to be a way.
In developing nations, there are poor boys who go to garbage dumps and pull out everything recyclable and go sell it. So there's money there's some money to be made, but the thing is that what people, for example, when in the old days we had Coke bottles, Coke bottles always had to be reused. So you went and gave the old Coca-Cola bottles back. If you introduce laws like that, everything has to be reused, then merchants will be forced to have those kinds of, and industry will have to do that. Give you a good example of a very wise policy. If you take all your computers, you have these millions and billions of computers. After they get reused, where do they go? They go to the garbage dump.
I'm getting the finger. It's time to wind down. I'm very sorry, but go ahead.
But Europe has introduced a law that says any company that sells computers in Europe must accept the computers back and recycle all the heavy metals in it, the copper, the tin, whatever they put into it. And so you're not having all these toxic chemicals going into your landfills and going around to your groundwater. At the same time, you're not having to spend immense amounts of money to recycle these products.
Thank you. I'm so sorry we've run out of time. I'm sure you can go on for hours. Thank you so much, Ari, for coming again.
Real pleasure.
I feel like you could do a continuing series.
There's so much that we can